The street looked clean after the rain, like the city had been wiped and left to dry. Red lights from a lone traffic signal washed the empty road. Our ambulance idled at the curb, engine humming low. My coffee was cold. My hands were warm inside thin gloves that smelled of antiseptic. I watched a drop of water crawl down the windshield and break into two. The radio whispered, static, a voice, then quiet again. Mia sat beside me with her chin in her hand, eyes half closed. We were both tired but not unhappy. Nights like this feel gentle. The air had that metallic smell you get after wet concrete cools. I could hear my own breathing. The station dog barked somewhere down the block and then stopped. I told Mia it felt like the whole city was holding its breath. She smiled without looking at me. "Enjoy it," she said. "It never lasts." We eased back into our rhythm. Checks, notes, waiting. I did not know the silence had a voice, and it was already calling. By 2 in the morning, the rhythm had settled in. The kind of rhythm that keeps you awake even when your body begs for rest. The radio crackled every few minutes with short, coded chatter. Units calling in, transfers confirmed, the usual background noise that fills long nights. I've always found comfort in that sound. It meant things were running as they should. Mia sat in the passenger seat, flipping through the call sheets. She hummed under her breath, some tune I didn't recognize. We'd already handled 2 runs that night. 1 cardiac patient and a minor crash downtown. Nothing unusual. The back of the rig smelled like latex gloves, plastic, and faint disinfectant. That smell stays with you long after you leave work. Outside, the roads were slick and empty. Our headlights stretched far ahead, cutting through the fog that lingered near the intersections. A cat darted across the road once, and both of us jumped a little before laughing it off. The kind of laugh that means you're more tired than you admit. Every so often, I'd glance at the monitors. The green glow of the screens pulsed softly, steady as a heartbeat. But tonight, the ECG monitor flickered for a second. Just a blip, 1 line, gone and back again. Mia noticed it too. "Loose wire?" she asked. I nodded, pretending not to think about it. Small things like that happen all the time. We both wanted to believe that. Around 2:30, we pulled into a gas station for coffee. The air smelled of diesel and rain. The cashier nodded at us. The kind of look people give when they know what you do but don't ask questions. I remember thinking how peaceful it all felt, how the quiet seemed heavier than usual. When we got back into the rig, the radio stayed silent longer than it should have. 10 minutes passed, then 15. For the first time that night, I noticed how loud the engine sounded when nothing else spoke back. It came through at 2:41 a.m. sharp, breaking the silence we'd grown used to. The sound startled both of us, and not because of the urgency, but because of how distorted it was. The voice on the radio didn't sound like our usual dispatcher. It was thinner, slower, like someone speaking through a tunnel. "Unit 6, respond to male, unconscious, Hollow Bridge Road," then static. Mia adjusted the volume. "Say again?" she asked, leaning closer. Nothing, just a hiss, and then the line went dead. I wrote the address down anyway, more out of habit than belief. Hollow Bridge Road hadn't been in service for months. It was closed after the landslide last winter. There wasn't supposed to be anyone out there. We tried calling back for confirmation, but the signal cut out each time. I checked the GPS. The route appeared by itself. Bright red line across a faded road that shouldn't exist on the updated map. It glowed faintly, like it wanted to be followed. "Could be a system error," I said, though my voice didn't sound sure. Mia frowned. "Dispatch doesn't glitch like that," she muttered. She wasn't wrong. Our equipment was old, but never wrong in that way. We sat there for a full minute, the rain tapping the windshield, the wipers sweeping in slow rhythm. Finally, I pressed the ignition. "We'll check it out. Probably a false alarm." Saying it out loud made it easier to believe. As we turned onto the outer road, the streetlights thinned until there were none. The only sound left was the soft rattle of the stretcher in the back. I kept glancing at the map, and every few seconds the route flickered. Once it even vanished completely, only to reappear 2 miles ahead, as if the GPS was guessing where to send us. Mia looked at me and said quietly, "You ever get a feeling like we're driving towards something we're not supposed to find?" I didn't answer. I just kept my eyes on the road that shouldn't have been there. The road narrowed as we got closer to the bridge. Fog rolled in thick and low, crawling along the pavement until it touched the front bumper. The headlights caught every droplet, turning them into floating dust. It was hard to tell where the road ended and the river began. I slowed the ambulance to a crawl. The tires hissed over wet gravel. The sign ahead leaned sideways, half buried in weeds. "Road closed." It looked like no one had been here in years. The radio had gone completely quiet, only static whispering in the background. Even the GPS stopped updating, frozen on a single coordinate that blinked like a pulse. Mia leaned forward. "There," she whispered. Something pale reflected under the light about 50 yards ahead. I thought it was trash at first, a tarp maybe. But as we pulled closer, the shape became clearer. A body lying face up near the railing, arms at its sides. We parked, and the moment I opened the door, the air hit me. Colder than the rest of the night, carrying the faint smell of metal and wet earth. My boots sank into the mud as we moved toward him. Every sound felt sharp. The crunch of gravel, the faint hum of the idling engine, my own breathing echoing in my mask. He looked like he'd just fallen asleep there, middle-aged, no visible wounds, clothes clean except for damp patches from the rain. His skin was pale but not blue, which was strange considering the cold. I knelt to check for a pulse. Nothing. Then I thought I felt something, the faintest vibration under the skin gone before I could be sure. Mia shined her flashlight across the guardrail. "No car, no skid marks," she said softly. The beam of light shook in her hand. Something about the air felt wrong. He wasn't frozen stiff like he should have been. It was as if he hadn't been here long. Yet everything around him, the silence, the stillness, made it feel like he'd been waiting. I looked at his half-open eyes and felt something I hadn't felt in years of this job. Like he'd been expecting me. We worked in silence, our breath forming faint clouds in the cold air. I checked his airway first, then pulse again, still nothing. His skin felt dry now, not slick from rain anymore. That was strange. I told myself the wind must have done it, but the air here didn't move. Mia brought the stretcher close, and together we lifted him. The body was lighter than expected, like he'd lost more than just warmth. His head rolled slightly toward me as we strapped him in, eyes half open, staring through me instead of at me. I've seen plenty of dead eyes before, but these looked aware. Not alive, but not empty either. Inside the rig, the heater hummed low. The smell of antiseptic filled the air as I cleaned his face, more out of habit than necessity. His features were calm, untouched by pain. I pressed 2 fingers to his wrist again, and for a second I felt a slow beat, once, then nothing. "Check the monitor," I told Mia. She switched it on. The screen blinked with faint static before settling on a flat line. No sound, no pulse. She adjusted the leads, tried again. This time the green line jumped once, then faded. "It's the cable," she said, but she didn't sound convinced. We started compressions. 1, 2, 3. My gloves squeaked against his chest. The dull thud of bone beneath skin echoed inside the small cabin. I remember counting under my breath, steady and controlled. That rhythm keeps you grounded even when logic slips. Halfway through, Mia leaned close to check his airway. Her hands froze. "Did you hear that?" she whispered. I stopped. The only sound was the soft click of the heart monitor. Then, faintly, something like a breath, a sigh that didn't belong to either of us. I looked down. His lips had parted slightly, barely enough to see the glint of teeth behind them. I told myself it was air leaving his lungs. It had to be. But when I leaned closer, I could have sworn I heard a whisper. Too quiet to understand, too real to ignore. Mia avoided my eyes. "Let's just get moving," she said, and I didn't argue. The drive started quietly, the kind of silence that presses against your chest. I kept my focus on the wet road while Mia logged the call on the tablet. The windshield wipers dragged slowly across the glass, struggling against a mist that never seemed to clear. Every few seconds, the radio hissed and then went silent again. The air inside the cabin grew cold, though the heater light still glowed red. I rubbed my hands together, but it didn't help. Behind me, the heart monitor flickered, one faint green pulse on the screen, then blank. I didn't say anything. I didn't want to spook her. Mia leaned back on the bench, eyes fixed on the stretcher. Did we strap his left arm?" she asked. I glanced in the mirror. The belt was loose but not undone. "Maybe shifted during the lift," I said, though I knew she'd fastened it tight. The body didn't move, but something about the angle looked wrong now. His head slightly turned toward her side of the rig. The hum of the engine grew louder, almost metallic. I turned down the siren just to hear better. There was breathing, faint, uneven. At first, I thought it was Mia, but she wasn't moving. She was staring at the monitor. "Pulse spike," she murmured. "Only one, then nothing." I called out over my shoulder, more out of habit than reason. "If you can hear me, stay with us." My voice shook. There was no response, just a sound like air being drawn through a cracked pipe. The cabin lights dimmed for a split second and a faint smell filled the space. Burnt wiring mixed with something metallic and sweet. I tightened my grip on the wheel. "We're almost there," I said, though the hospital was still 15 minutes away. Then through the static of the radio, I heard my name, just once. Clear and quiet, like it was whispered from inside the rig. Mia's head snapped up. "Did you?" she started, but I cut her off. "No," I said too quickly. The road stretched empty ahead of us, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something else was riding with us now. Halfway across the bridge, the world seemed to fall apart. The siren cut out mid-tone, leaving only the sound of tires gliding over slick pavement. Every light inside the rig flickered in rhythm, on and off, until the cabin looked like it was breathing. Mia called out that the monitor had spiked again. I risked a glance in the rearview mirror. The patient's chest had lifted once. Slow, deliberate, not a twitch, a breath. My pulse hammered so hard it drowned out the rain. "Shock him," I said, my voice breaking more than I wanted it to. She reached for the paddles, but before she touched them, his eyes opened, wide, focused. The pupils caught the strobe light and glowed wet and dark, like he was looking straight through the glass and into the road ahead. I slammed the brakes. The ambulance skidded sideways, everything inside clattering against metal walls. The stretcher straps rattled as if something fought to be free. Then came the voice, hoarse, strained, but steady. "You came too late," Mia screamed. I could barely move. The voice wasn't loud, but it filled the space, vibrating in the metal frame. I turned around. The man's lips were still. The words seemed to come from somewhere else, from the air itself. The lights cut completely. Total darkness. All I could hear was my heartbeat and the ticking of the cooling engine. Then another whisper, this time closer, right by my ear. Don't take me back. Something cold brushed against my neck. I started the engine out of pure panic, headlights exploding against the fog. In that flash, I saw the stretcher, empty. The straps lay open, dangling from the sides. Mia scrambled to the back, shouting his name, though she didn't know it. Nothing, just the sound of rain hitting metal. I pressed the gas, needing to move, needing light, needing anything real again. For the rest of that drive, neither of us spoke. The siren had stopped working entirely. All we heard was the steady hum of the engine, and beneath it, the faint sound of breathing that wasn't ours. When we reached the hospital, the world outside felt too normal. The parking lot lights glowed white and clean against the wet pavement, the kind of brightness that should have felt safe but only made everything worse. I parked too fast, tires screeching, my hands still trembling on the wheel. Mia jumped out first, yanking the back doors open. Her voice cracked as she called for help. Nurses rushed forward, Bourdon, pushing a gurney toward us, but they froze when they saw the inside. The stretcher was empty. The straps hung loose, swaying slightly as if something had just slipped free seconds ago. The charge nurse frowned, assuming we'd brought the wrong rig. "Where's the patient?" she asked. I couldn't answer. The words wouldn't come out. I just kept staring at the wet floor where we'd laid the blanket, still pressed with the shape of a body that wasn't there anymore. Security came next. They checked the loading bay cameras. I stood behind the monitor as they replayed our arrival. The footage showed the ambulance pulling in, our doors opening, and Mia and I stepping out together. Carrying nothing, no stretcher, no body, just us. Mia started crying quietly. The sound didn't match her face, almost silent, like her voice had been taken. I tried to tell them something, anything that made sense, but every word I said sounded wrong. The nurse looked at me like I was drunk or lost. "You should rest," she said softly. "You've been working too long." We filed the report anyway. Basic details, no names. The system wouldn't let me log the dispatch ID. It said the call didn't exist. I tried again, manually entering the timestamp. Still nothing. By morning, the report disappeared completely. No record, no trace, like it had been wiped before sunrise. When I walked back to the ambulance, the seats were dry. The back smelled faintly of ozone, like air after lightning. Mia refused to get inside. She stood near the curb, eyes wide, repeating the same thing over and over. He wasn't gone. He never left. I didn't argue. I didn't want to know which part of that was true. A few days passed before I went back to the station. I told them I was sick, but the truth was I couldn't bring myself to hear another radio call. The silence at home wasn't better. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the bridge, the fog, and the shape of that man lying so still. When I finally returned, I asked our supervisor for the call record. He looked through the system, typing slowly, frowning. "No such dispatch," he said. "Nothing from that time, nothing to that location." I asked to hear the recording myself. He shrugged. "There's no audio file either. Line must have been dead." I left his office and went to the archives on my own. The old logs are kept on a local server, everything from the past decade. I found the date, scrolled through, and there it was. One entry that didn't belong. Hollow Bridge Road, logged at 2:41 a.m. Caller, unknown. The remarks field had only one note, male voice, unclear transmission, repeated help before disconnect. For a long time, I just stared at the screen. My ID was attached to the entry, even though I hadn't logged it. Somehow, it showed my initials as the reporting officer. Later that evening, I stopped by the local precinct. One of the officers I knew told me something I wasn't ready to hear. A crash had happened on that same bridge months before it was shut down. The driver, a man in his 40s, had lost control on the wet pavement and went through the railing. His body was never recovered. The officer said sometimes drivers still report seeing flashing lights near that stretch. A few even claimed they heard sirens before realizing no vehicles were there. I drove back to that road at sunset, parking where the guardrail had been rebuilt. The air felt colder, heavier. I stepped out, stood there and listened. For a moment I could swear I heard distant radio chatter, one voice cutting through static saying the same thing I heard that night. Unit 6, respond to Hollow Bridge Road. Only this time the voice didn't sound distant. It sounded exactly like mine. 3 years have passed, yet some nights still feel the same as that one. When the rain starts to fall and the city goes quiet, I hear the faint echo of the siren that never really stopped. I've learned that silence has its own kind of weight. It presses down harder when you're alone behind the wheel, headlights slicing through mist that looks too familiar. Mia left the job a few months after it happened. She never gave a reason, but I didn't need one. I think she still dreams about that voice just like I do. Sometimes when we cross paths at the grocery store, she avoids looking at me like she's afraid that saying my name might wake something back up. I've driven hundreds of patients since then. Some lived, some didn't. But every time the monitor beeps once and pauses, my stomach knots. I can't help but remember that single heartbeat that came from nowhere. I tell myself it was a malfunction, a trick of the mind, but I know better. The air that night was too cold, too aware. The road to Hollow Bridge has been repaved now. New guardrails, new signs, brighter lights. Yet no one likes taking that route after dark. Drivers say their radios glitch when they pass. Some swear they hear dispatch calls that don't exist, voices repeating coordinates that lead nowhere. I stopped trying to explain it. You can't explain what refuses to stay gone. You can only live with it. The memory, the smell of rain and antiseptic, the whisper of your own name when no one else is there. Sometimes when I'm parked outside a hospital waiting for clearance, I catch myself staring at the reflection in the side mirror. For a split second, I think I see someone sitting in the back, still quiet, watching. When I turn, there's nothing. Just the stretcher, the equipment, and the echo of a breath I can't place. People think this job makes you numb to death. It doesn't. It just teaches you that some endings never finish. And when the siren wails through the night, fading into the distance, I swear the road bends the same way again, leading me back to the place I was never supposed to return.